This program is brought to you by Emory University.
Welcome. My name is Halle, and I have the pleasure of serving as Vice Provost for International Affairs at Emory and Director of the Halle Institute for Global Learning. We're delighted today to be sponsoring this very special panel with guests from as far away as flown in from Taiwan, and as nearby is Georgia Tech, and then right here at Emory, the Carter Center, and in political science here at Emory. This is a very special year, 2011, because it's 100 years since the revolution of 1911. And the panel today will focus on the continuing impact on political, economic, and social developments in mainland China and Taiwan. And I want to especially thank the Carter Center China program and Dr. Yawei Lu, who directs that. And I want to also thank the Consul General of Taiwan, Anna Cao, who is here with us today. And she will make a few opening remarks too, because without them, we wouldn't have the panel today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Smetko, Professor Liu, esteemed speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to today's seminar entitled The Revolution of 1911 and its Continuing Impact on Political, Economic, and Social Developments on Mainland China and Taiwan. Actually, in the beginning of 20th century, a group of people had attempted to do a mission impossible to overthrow a more than a 200-year Qing dynasty. And after 10 fatal attempts with many lives sacrificed, they finally succeeded. In 1911, the Republic of China was established as the first democratic republic in Asia and an early adopter of free market system. Today, the Republic of China on Taiwan is an active democracy and a vibrant economy. To celebrate the centennial, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Atlanta is pleased to work with the Emory University and the Carter Center to present you the seminar. Our distinguished scholars will take us back over the last 100 years, examine the present, and give insights into the revolution's ongoing influence on the mainland and Taiwan. I would also like to express my sincere appreciations to Professor Smetko, Professor Liu as today's moderator, and the speakers, including Professor Mary Brown Bullock of Emory University, Professor Hanchao Lu of Georgia Tech, and especially Professor Kwei-Bo Huang of Cheng Chi University, who came along the way from Taiwan. And of course, many thanks to our audience, because without your participation, this seminar won't be able to be informative and successful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Consul General Gao. My name is Yawei Liu. I'm here to introduce our distinguished speakers. I want to share first of all, with you, my recent trip to Taiwan. I had the honor of being able to go to the presidential palace and met with President Ma. And of course, he talked about the centennial of the Shanghai Revolution. He said China was indeed the first republic in Asia, but after that, October 1911, things went terribly wrong for a long time until the 1980s, when Taiwan became the first part of China, or to start realizing the dreams of Dr. Yat-Sen and others. So I thought it was very, very interesting. And you see all the three sponsors here. Thanks to Halle for sponsoring and hosting this. Thanks to Consul General Gao and also the Carter Center. So first, of course, I want to introduce, I won't read, you can see how impressive Professor Bullock, CV is too long to read, but I want to say that she is at the nerve center of the U.S.-China relationship since the 1970s. I think last year, we went to dinner with Mary and Ezra Vogel, whose book just came out, and they talk about the early years when they first went to China, when there was no relationship. And her book, The Oil Prince Legacy, just came out, and it's about the Rockefeller family and the charity in China. And I think there is also a very tight connection between Emory University and Peking Union Medical Hospital. Many of the graduate students from that university are here. So Mary will be the first speaker, and our second speaker is Dr. Hanchao Lu from Georgia Tech. He was at one of our meetings in Beijing, and he ran into graduate students, and the students said, "Long time no see, because before I took the comprehensive exam, I had to read your book, which is Beyond the Neon Light over here." And if you haven't seen a fine, excellent historian, on life in Shanghai, here is Hanchao. And today, I think you're going to hold your breath when he is going to show some pictures taken at the time of the revolution. Our third speaker, Kwei-Bo Huang, is relatively young, did not get his PhD until 10 years ago. However, not only he's a professor, but he served as vice president of the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, but he also worked at the Foreign Ministry of Taiwan. So he's one of those who has worked in the democracy, and he can tell you how messy democracy is. Even though Taiwan has become a democracy, it's not easy. And our speakers will offer. First, Mary will talk about the Republic of China's state building efforts, impact on the PRC institutions, and also educational and science impacts. By the way, I think had it not been for Mary, the academic exchange between mainland China and the United States would not have been there, because she was sitting there, and we have so many scholars, students coming from China, thanks to her. Hanchao then will show you a collection of pictures, and last but not the least, Kwei-Bo Huang will talk about the revolution and its impact on Taiwan. Before I'm going to turn over to Mary, I have one quote from our great leader Mao Zedong. In 1941, he talked about the Shin-Hye Revolution. I didn't have time to translate the whole thing into English, but last night when I read it, I was really awed by what he spoke, because that's indeed what the Shin-Hye Revolution was all about. And that is something mainland China is now trying very hard to accomplish. That's, China now has too much nationalism, not nearly enough democracy, and China now is working very hard to take care of the welfare of the people. But China still has a long way to go. But my hope is it's not going to take a revolution to realize that. We all love the revolution of 1900, but we hate to see another revolution in the horizon. So without further ado, I'll turn over the floor to Mary Bullock. The floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yawei, and also Halle and Madame Gao. This is a wonderful occasion to really spend an afternoon talking about the impact of this revolution. As I look at the audience, I know there are many of you that could be up here, so I hope there'll be a very good discussion. I want to begin talking about the influence of the Revolution of 1911 on the People's Republic of China with a flag, the first flag of the Republic of China. Now, I want to ask not our panel, but does anybody in the audience know what the first flag of the Republic of China looked like? It had 5 stripes. 5 stripes. This is the first flag. It's known as the 5 races under one union flag. And it was the first flag from 1912 until 1928. And it flew mainly in Beijing, I think. It's not terribly well known. But it comprises 5 strong color bars. The red is for the Han, the yellow is for the Manchus, the blue is for the Mongolians, white is for the Hui or the Turkic people, and black for the Tibetans. It's visually striking, and it's symbolically a strong flag. In 1912, China was being dismembered by the imperialist powers. French, British, German spheres of influence threatened to destroy two of the Qing dynasty's most important attributes, its vast imperial scope territorially and its multi-ethnic identity. Sun Yat-sen's three principles of the people, as Yawei noted, clearly proclaim nationalism and the restoration of the boundaries of China as a sovereign state as one of the first principles of the revolution. And I think this early flag, this visually powerful flag, proclaimed that although the Qing dynasty had been overthrown, the new and struggling Republic of China was the rightful heir to all of the Qing domains. Unequal treaties, it was hoped, would end, and foreign powers dispelled. This flag persisted even through the troubled warlord years, when China appeared close to being rent asunder by indigenous forces as well as external ones. It changed to the current flag of the Republic of China when Chiang Kai-shek established his government in Nanjing. But Chiang Kai-shek's government continued to defend China's claim to the vast Qing Empire. William Kirby, professor of history at Harvard University, notes that this is one of the signal accomplishments of the diplomacy of this entire era, a legacy that persists in China's current boundaries and multi-ethnic identity. And I quote from Bill Kirby's article on the internationalization of China. The Republican government of 1912 inherited not what one might call historic China, but the Da Qingguo, the vast Qing Empire, the multinational and multicultural expanse that included Manchuria, Mongolia, Eastern Turkestan, and Tibet, among other areas. The first decade of the 20th century was full of portents of the dissolution of the empire. But the amazing fact of this era is that this space was not only redefined as Chinese and as the sacred soil of China, but also defended diplomatically to such a degree that the borders of the PRC today are essentially those of the Qing, minus only Outer Mongolia. Kirby concludes that the revolution of 1911 may have ended the Qing dynasty, but that the empire remained. More accurately, the empire became the basis of the Chinese national state. The morphing of the Chinese Qing Empire into the Chinese nation state, at least territorially eventually, reminds us of other historical continuities which transcend political upheavals. Likewise, there are significant and I think often overlooked continuities between the Republican period and the next revolution, which brought the Chinese Communist Party to power in 1949. For a long time, we called this the 1949 divide. Political scientists wrote about everything after 1949, and historians wrote about everything that went before. That has changed, but perhaps not sufficiently. And let me just briefly discuss two additional areas of continuity as we're looking at this long century in China. These are areas of continuity which also have their values in the ethos of the Revolution of 1911. Modern state building, institution building, and for lack of a better word, internationalism. First, state building. A new text that I use for a class on Chinese politics has one chapter on political history. It's a good book, but there's only one chapter on political history, from the empire to the People's Republic of China. The Republican period includes sections on warlords, the May 4th movement, the birth of the CCP, the rise of Mao Zedong, war with Japan, and the Civil War. Buried in less than one page is the Nanjing decade. The assessment is bleak. Lack of funds blocked almost all accomplishment or even significant progress. Period. Full stop. There is no mention of any legacy from the Republican era to the Communist era. This is surely too harsh. In reality, studies of this period have clearly demonstrated that some of the foundations for today's modern Chinese states, including both Taiwan and the People's Republic of China, were being established in this period. There were deeply unsavory aspects of this modern state building. Coercive power was strengthened, and democratic institutions failed. Rural China, already heavily taxed and grindingly poor, perhaps only became weaker. Although many of Sun Yat-sen's principles were ignored as this period unfolds, for example, land to the tiller, famous aphorism, some of his economic principles strongly influenced the Kuomintang economic policy and later that of the CCP in China. Sun's strategy of economic development emphasized heavy industry and state development of infrastructure, notably transportation and communication networks. Here, significant progress was made, primarily in the urban coastal regions. Between 1931 and 36, electric power doubled. Industrial growth increased by roughly 7% a year, which was on a par with many of the European countries and the United States in that era. China achieved tariff autonomy. A transportation and communications grid in eastern China was improved, and higher education and scientific research expanded markedly. My own research, as Yawei has mentioned, has focused on institution building in the scientific and medical sectors in both the Republican period and in the PRC. Here one sees remarkable continuity and also a progressive evolution. In 1928, the Academy Sinica was created in Nanjing, a distinctly modern, uniquely Chinese model that drew its inspiration from the French Academy, the German Max Planck Institute, the American National Research Council. First-rate institutes in the life and geological sciences were created, staffed by returning Chinese students, educated in the most prestigious American and European universities. After 1949, the Academy Sinica and some of its institutes and staff moved to Taiwan. Most personnel in institutes, however, moved to Beijing to constitute the Chinese Academy of Sciences. One of the nationalist government's ministries, the Ministry of Health, likewise created important national and provincial level public health institutions that laid the foundation for the three-tier Shen health system that was adopted in the 1950s by Mao's government. The goal of the nationalist health ministry was state medicine and a provincial infrastructure for environmental and sanitary improvements, industrial health, maternal and child care health, public school education, epidemiological surveys was established in many cities and in many provinces of China at that time. National level institutions, especially the precursor to what is today's China's CDC, China's Center for Communicable Disease, were actually established in the Nanjing era, the Central Field Health Station. And it moved after 1949 with most of its personnel to Beijing, but many of its personnel also led the public health and medical movements in Taiwan. So we see the foundation, institutional foundations that have an impact in both areas. Higher education per se also boomed in the Republic of China. We are well aware of the growing censorship and political restrictions on China's universities and intellectuals during this era. But the People's Republic of China inherited a robust system, national system of higher education, including provincial and metropolitan universities, a handful of foreign-funded universities, which were eventually absorbed into the PRC's new structure of state-dominated higher education. Let me turn from state and institution building to my third point, the internationalism of the Republic of China. Or perhaps one should call it the cosmopolitanism, as does Frank Dikötter. Can someone tell me how you pronounce his name? Is that right? Dikötter? I've never heard anyone say his name. He's a very provocative writer. In a provocative new book titled The Age of Openness, China Before Mao. Those of us who began to travel and work with mainland Chinese institutions in the 70s and 80s were surprised to discover this extraordinary yearning for China to join a global economic and intellectual community. Or rather, I should say, rejoin, because these recent decades resemble in many aspects China in the first half of the 20th century. This is the China that Frank Dikötter tries to capture, as he describes it, I was quite stunned, as China's golden age of engagement with the world. That's a new look at the Republican period as a golden age of encounter with the world. Sun Yat-sen's personal life story certainly modeled that engagement. Born in Guangzhou, he lived in Hawaii and Japan, was one of the first two graduates in Western medicine of what is today Hong Kong University Medical College, and was baptized as a Christian. His economic policies called for significant global investment in China's emerging economy. It was Sun Yat-sen who engineered Germany's post-World War I investment in China's industry and military. The internationalization of China was extensive throughout this period. I think more and more studies, both in China and in this country, are looking at that. In 1919, there were 350,000 foreigners registered to live in China. I was surprised, at that number. And another number that Dikötter gives is that Protestant and Catholic missionaries had a presence in all but a few hundred of China's 1,700 counties. That, again, is an amazing statistic. I assume that he is correct. Diplomatically and intellectually, China was represented in all of the international conferences of the era, whether it was high-stakes geopolitics to genetics to penal reform. You find a Chinese presence. Thousands of Chinese students returned, studied abroad, most of them returning to lead Chinese companies, institutes, and universities. And of course, foreign companies were heavily engaged in China, most notably for Americans, the Standard Oil and the British America Tobacco Company, which maintained a geographical presence in the far reaches of China, not just in the coastal regions. And foreign institutions, today we would call them NGOs, operated in China with minimal restrictions. Now, the nationalist government did increase restrictions on them, but it rarely banned them. In my work on the Rockefeller Foundation and related organizations, I have been surprised at how few restrictions there were. No registration was required, even for rural reconstruction efforts, which were trying to change the social and political order. These were American social activists engaged in the rural areas of China. The parallels with the last several decades in China are very interesting, even striking. Like the nationalist government, the CCP has welcomed international investors, educators, artists, and even activist NGOs. Restrictions come and go, and right now, for example, we are definitely in a tightening period. But China's contemporary reform and opening bears many resemblances to China's global engagement in the Republican period. I've touched just very briefly on a few of the continuities that I see across this 20th century. I look forward to the discussion that comes and to my colleagues' comments. Thank you.
Our second speaker will be Hanchao Lu. Mary just talked about the continuity. Hanchao is going to talk about the violence, the bloodshed, that whole brutality of the revolution itself. Hanchao, the floor is yours.
We need to pull this out.
He's going to show pictures.
Thank you, Yawei, and I would like to thank the panel organizer for inviting me to give this presentation, mainly on photos I recently edited and published on the 1911 revolution. We know that 1911 revolution is not among the most brutal revolution in recent Chinese history. We had a revolution and rebellion much worse than the 1911 revolution. Nevertheless, the uprising in Wuchang was a violent action, and nobody invited cameramen to take photos of this incident. Plus, this revolution itself was not very well planned, organized. It happened all of a sudden, even to the rebels, to the head of insurgents, of course, to Sun Yat-sen himself. So, for that reason, we don't have many visual material left from that period of time. About 10 years ago, I happened to know a person named Ron Anderson, who is a sociology professor at the University of Minnesota. And he inherited his grandfather's photo collections. And it was a surprise to me. But of course, I was very pleased when he invited me to work on these collections. And mainly we select, because it's over 1,000 photos taken by his grandfather named Stafford, who went to China in 1909, so 2 years before the revolution, and left in 1915. And he went back again later, but the second visit was not really related to the revolution. So today I will mainly present part of the photos from that collections, and my main theme of these, the book published by University of Washington Press, was that the revolution had a huge impact on Chinese society and the culture, but nevertheless, the traditional value continued, and a lot of pre-revolution social custom continued even after this dramatic revolution overthrew China's 2,000 years monarchy and found Asia's first republic. It's not just first republic in Chinese history, but in entire Asia. But my point is that although the Republic of China was founded 100 years ago, but to build a true democratic republic remain a task for Chinese people on the mainland. So let me start in the picture. Before this collection was found, we usually got photo on 19th revolution based on two sources. One is a journalist named Dinger, and he was the report from China Press, which is a newly established press, just started in April 1911, 6 months before the revolution. So he was sent to the frontier to the report. But nevertheless, in the book he published after the revolution, you see the date here is 1912. He only including 36 illustrations. You also can take 36 illustrations. Among these 36 illustrations, only 12 were related to the revolution. Others is on other subject. So we don't have many. The other book, also published almost immediately after the revolution, is done by Frederick McCormick, who was a reporter sent by Associated Press to China immediately after the revolution. But he only included 6 pictures in his book. So these are virtually the only sort of reliable resources of picture of the revolution. Then we have another major sources published by commercial press in Shanghai. And these including a lot of photos. Here, I want to give you a few, the cover page, most of these photos were group pictures. Very few is not really related to the battlefield of the revolution, right? So in some ways, it's a little bit disappointing. And there's no credit assigned, so we don't know who took these pictures. So this basically, before the staff collection was found, basically was the source material for, vision source material for scholars to use on the revolution. Then now we have staff photos. Because time limit, I won't give detail about this individual. He basically was a person grew up in Colorado and studied photograph from age 17, and basically all his life, that's his profession. And he was hired by the commercial press of Shanghai. Commercial press, for those who are not familiar with this part of history, commercial press was the largest publishing house in East Asia at the time, and to this day still very, very influential, remain a major publishing house in China. And he was hired as the photographer or photographic report by the commercial press. And he was the only American. And he was also credited for bringing the most cutting-edge photo technology of that time to China. There are other books to verify his contribution. So here are a few pictures that came from that collection. First of all, from that picture, what strikes me is that 1911 revolution is inevitable. It's a society was really in chaos, and in 1910, 1911, there's huge flooding along Yangtze River Valley. So these are refugees, and the people were drafted for maintaining irrigation systems, and the disfigured beggars, and the people die, out of starvation, or these definitely snow on the ground. Some of the pictures is not pleasant to watch. I just want to caution you. And also, right before the revolution, there was a plague, this epidemic caused by rats, happened in Manchuria, and killed at least 60,000 people. But this picture shows that the Qing government, in fact, they engaged reform, including sort of using modern medical science to prevent this kind of disease. So this picture shows in North China, they start to have all these sort of modern technology to prevent the spread of the plague. So fortunately, although it did reach part of Hebei province, but it did not reach Beijing. And the staff went to China right 3 years, 2 years after the China's civil service examination was abolished. And this is the theme of the examination hall in Nanjing. Only the watchtower building survived to this day. But you can tell only a few years after the system was abolished, the ground already, very decayed and like run-down neighborhood. And this is a group of so-called New Army. It's part of the Qing government try to reestablish its military strength by introduce modern military technology and organizational institution So this so-called new army was built, hoped to save the dynasty. But ironically, the revolution, in fact, starting from the member of this new army. Eventually, the group, the regiment, started rebellion, came from new army. So it's really a rebellion within the system. This is some of the leader of Qing government official, and some of them actually become the leader of the uprising. Among them, the most famous one is Li Yuanhong here. He was supposedly, we don't know for sure, he dragged underneath his bed to serve as the leader of revolution before others like Sun Yat-sen came to the scene. Then, before the revolution, Sun Yat-sen organized numerous military uprisings on the coastal area, especially in South China, but most of them failed. This is one of the major rebellions near Guangzhou today, called Huang Huagang, Yellow Flower Ridge uprising, and those people were captured and brutally killed by the Qing government. This one is taken on the eve of 1911 revolution, on October 9th. These two individuals named Liu Fujing and Peng Chufan, they were main organizer of the uprising. But somehow the government detected that, arrest them, and kill them immediately in public, hope to warn the other rebellion. So that's the public exhibition of their head. This is a picture that the Qing government, after the uprising broken in Wuchang, sent troops. This on the Tiananmen Boulevard, right, not too far from Tiananmen Square. Today's Tiananmen Square. And most of the rebels were not well trained. This photo shows that they were hiding in the field near a railway station. Here's quite a lot of theme of the revolution on both sides. I will go quite quickly through that. That's just part of that. The Qing government definitely is much better equipped. They will have these, at that time, considered most update or advanced telecommunication skill. And this kind of soldier really contribute to the government crackdown. By November, actually, the government was able to recapture the city of Wuhan. And this another photo to show Li Yuanhong on the far right was directed the battlefield against the government troops. And the city was caught in fire, of course. About 1/5 of the city was totally destroyed. So here's a few pictures. And we know Hankou is a city where there are few foreign concession areas, the area that preserved for Europeans and Japan. These photos were taken near the German concession. The building on the far right is the German bank, and in the middle was Consulate General of German. And about 12 days after the uprising broken out, European power sent total about 24 battlefield to navigate around Yangtze River to Wuhan to try to protect the falling area. This is part of the downtown. Hankou was destroyed by the gunfire and all these bombs. Ironically, only one board left. It reads like to making a wonderful cake of all nations, which must be a sign from a bakery, and it shows the cosmopolitanism of the city before the war. So I saw this interesting photo. It's quite challenging to select photos because since every piece has its value, but we have limited space. Here is the Consulate General of Japan, and but those people who are on the roof of the building are not just Japanese, but including Europeans. They are watching the fire in the city, and the European communities start to build the low barricade to try to prevent the intrusion of the conflict on both sides, because you never know if they may affect the falling area. But eventually it did not. Here's pictures about the brutality of the war. A lot of these wounded soldiers on both sides were drifted along Yangtze River and saved by Red Cross. And some of the coffin was broken and deliberately put on the railway to prevent government send troops through by train. These are quite terrible scene of the. You can tell that some Western residents volunteer to help clean the ground. These are cartload of dead body, corpse. This is pretty variable picture because this building serves as the headquarters military government of the Republic. Was late destroyed, and so today this is probably the only picture about that building. We went to Wuhan. They were surprised too, because when they tried to rebuild, they tried to find the models. But unfortunately, at that time, the photo was unknown. But now it's too late. Today there's a museum about 19th Revolution in Wuhan, but the building is somehow different. Here in the middle is again Li Yuanhong, who served as the head of insurgents before the Republic was founded. And this picture shows staff was able to be there in person, and this photo shows he is taking picture with the insurgents. I probably run out of time, so I can. You have 3 more minutes. Okay. This is a picture of Shen-Hye who left Shanghai on New Year's Day to go to Nanjing to assume the position of provincial president of ROC. And probably so far this is the best quality photo we can see, because this is quite well-known photos. These all, I think I should go quickly, because I want to see. This is in Shanghai, this volunteer corps sent by the European community to try to protect city. This is the Jiangnan arsenal, which served as the main supply for government, but it was taken by rebels. And here you see in the Kunshan County after the revolution, it used to be government mansion, so to speak, but now become street peddler and a cage, bird cage. So it's a scene of decline. I would like to share a few social scenes, especially today's panel is about social development related to the revolution. This kind of scene we can probably see 2,000 years ago, but we also see in early 20th century China. On the background is ancestor worship on the family graveyard, not very clear here. Pictures about so-called pigtail. This is quite interesting photo. This is in the Confucian Temple in Jiading, in Jiangsu province. Today belongs to Shanghai. This YMCA sort of delegation visited Confucian. This Confucian is sort of coincident or peacefully integrate with Christianity. And the sign said all countries in the world will become one country. Of course, this means one country under Jesus Christ. And even funeral have some kind of Christian symbol for the head of commercial press. He was assassinated soon after the revolution. And this, again, a picture shows even before revolution, there's a decade of Confucian order. Some of them already save the hair instead of keep these pigtails. And this U.S. flag and the dragon flag of the Qing dynasty. That was it. And this one probably deliberately opposed to show the East versus West. Right? One with Western business suits and use typewriter, another use traditional Chinese government use writing brush to write, and even the it was about Christianity. But the landscape painting is very traditional. And some is related to women's social status. This is the earliest picture, probably about female factory worker. In the front, a few lines, all women worker, most of them still have bound feet. You can tell. They probably among the first women work in modern Chinese history in commercial press. And this very rare scene of seeing a Confucian school. You see the statue of Confucius with two of his disciples. And after the revolution, we start to have co-education, girls and boys attending school. This is in a remote county in Anhui province. So which means, again, this stuff cut the queue of his colleagues in Confucian in the commercial press and turn these pigtails sort of into a modern gentleman. And this a picture about the work scene of staff work research college in Confucian in commercial press. And this picture should show right immediately after the revolution, when the city wall was damaged and staff sitting on the city wall behind this Huang He Lou, one of the main building in.
That's the photographer?
Yeah, that's the photographer. Yeah. All right, I think I'll end here. Basically, this is valuable collections, and we should put a good use of this kind of material to illustrate the revolution. Thank you.
I'm a little lenient, Professor Lu, because the pictures are so good. So our next speaker is Professor Kwei-Bo Huang from National Cheng Chi University of Taiwan. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Liu, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here to talk about the 1911 revolution and today's Republic of China on Taiwan. Maybe some people doubt that whether or not you people in Taiwan still celebrate or memorize the past resulting from the 1911 revolution. Actually, I would say yes, and we have a series of celebration activities going on in Taiwan because we do have a very long and firm bonding with the Shanghai 1911 revolution, because the current ruling party in Taiwan and for the history of the Republic of China for the most of the time has been governed by the KMT. And the KMT is also the party that promoted a lot of uprisings, revolutions during the late Qing dynasty. And of course, as one of my colleague panelists just mentioned, the 1911 revolution was not a well-prepared one. And actually, the KMT wasn't the major player in the 1911 revolution. But later on, the KMT integrated all different forces, or most different forces, to make things happen, to overthrow the Qing dynasty, to establish the republic, even though the republic was taken over by Yuan Shikai, who intended to restore the so-called constitutional monarchy to replace the republican. And that's why Dr. Sun Yat-sen launched a second revolution. That's what he termed his effort to overthrow the Yuan Shikai regime, to regain or to restore the system of the Republic of China. So I'm going to introduce that to you step by step. And today I think my comments will be focused on three major parts. The first is the revolution and the KMT. And the second is how the Republic of China recognized the significance and meaning of the Shanghai Revolution. And last, Taiwan's ties with the Shanghai Revolution. Don't think Taiwan is just a remote thinking island of the Chinese shore, because Taiwan and its people play some role in the Shanghai Revolution. So I'm going to mention that to you as well. Then a very short concluding remark. Okay, first, the relevance of KMT and the Shanghai Revolution. First, we have to know the history of the KMT so that you can know the relevance between the KMT and the Shanghai Revolution. As some of you may have known that actually the beginning of the KMT organization was Xinzhonghui, founded by Dr. Song Yat-Sen and Mr. Song Jiaoren in 1894 in the US. That's why, just recently we found that Dr. Song Yat-Sen held US passport so that he could travel around the world. So according to American Institute in Taiwan, in a legal way, Dr. Song Yat-Sen is also an American citizen. So you can say that the 1911 revolution has some relevance to the US as well. And Xinzhonghui was transformed into Tongmenghui. As you can see from the name title, it is an alliance of different groups aimed at overthrowing the Qing dynasty. So Tongmenghui was established in 1905 in Tokyo, Japan. And that time, Japan allowed these so-called rebels to form some underground group in Tokyo because Japan would like to make China into even bigger chaos as long as there is someone trying to overthrow the Qing court. And then the Tongmenghui was reorganized into Kuomintang, KMT, right after the success of the Shanghai Revolution. And as I said before, because Yuan Shikai, who took power after the establishment of the republic, tried to launch a constitutional monarchy system in China. So Dr. Song Yat-Sen went to Japan again. And the change in the KMT to the Chinese Revolution Party in order to concentrate his focus on how to expel those people associated with Yuan Shikai and Yuan Shikai himself as well, in order to fulfill his original plan of the real Republic of China. And you can see the success of the KMT in 1999 when Yuan Shikai and his influence were expelled by the Chinese Revolution Party. And so in 1999, in Guangzhou, Dr. Song Yat-Sen announced that the Chinese Revolution Party was renamed as Kuomintang of China. That is how 中国国民党, Kuomintang of China, continued till today. Okay, back to the Shanghai Revolution. Before Shanghai Revolution, actually there have been quite a few uprisings in China. So this is just a map to show you some of these many uprisings conducted by those rebels. For example, you can see the triangle shapes here, and a lot of uprisings were held in Guangdong, mostly because Dr. Song Yat-Sen's personal connections in Guangdong. And of course, you can see some other uprisings in the Yangtze River areas because Gongjinghui or Wenxue She, those groups had their own connections with those areas, Changjiang areas. So you can see in Guangdong, mostly KMT's uprisings, and Changjiang, Liuyu, Yangtze rivers, mostly Gongjinghui or others. And the date for the 1911 revolution, or Shanghai Revolution, was October 10th, 1911, which is also the National Day of the Republic of China. And the initial locations included Wuchang, the very first place, and Hankou and Hanyang of Hubei province. When the uprising was carried out, you can see the flag these rebels used. We called it 铁血18星旗. Sounds very like a Kung Fu novel flag. In English, it's Iron Blood 18-star flag. These 18 star represented the 18 provinces of China at that time. And actually, this flag was favored by Gongjinghui Wenxue, not Tongmenghui, not the mainstreams of the KMT cadres. Because in this Shanghai Revolution, as I said, the major role wasn't played by Tongmenghui or KMT, but by Gongjinghui or Wenxue and new armies as well. And as you can see on your right-hand side, that's Qing Dynasty's national flag, just for a very short period, because Qing Dynasty thought, okay, since Western countries had their own flags, then maybe we should have one. Okay, and you can see the difference. Now, there's one more dot in the middle, because in the later, these revolution parties thought, if we included the 18 provinces where Chinese people were living, then what about the northwestern provinces, Dongsanshan? At that time, we had 3 provinces in northeast. So after some bargaining, so people decided to add one more dot in the middle. So the flag was changed like this. And this is the map of the Hubei province. Okay, and you can see Henan is up there, my ancestors' hometown, and Shanxi is up there. And Hubei, that's the blue circle, that area is what we call in Chinese the 3 towns of Wuhan, Wuhan Sanzhen. Actually, these include Wuhan, Wuchang, Hanyang. And for a closer look, you can see when the uprising began, first in Wuchang, second in Hanyang, and the last one in Hankou. So within 2 or 3 days, the rebels successfully occupied all the 3 towns. But later, the Qing court didn't give up fighting back. So the Qing court called Yuan Shikai back to the new army, because that time Yuan Shikai was sort of expelled out of the new army. So Yuan Shikai was called back and with other generals to fight against these rebels. So after about some 40 days, the Qing court took back 2 towns. But still, all the rebels, all the revolutionary parties successfully kept Wuchang. And their successful keeping of Wuchang actually helped the other provinces stand up against the Qing court. So the first uprising in Hubei, Shanghai Revolution. Then you can see in Hunan, in timely order, Shanxi, Jiangxi, Shanxi. The flag, the red flag means Gongjinghui Wenxue uprisings. And the blue flag representative Tongmenghui initiated uprisings. And in Zhili, that is Hebei, because Zhili had some other underground societies, in cooperation with a very small number of Tongmenghui staff. So I use some other symbols to represent it. In Hebei and Yunnan, and Shanghai, and Guizhou, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, Anhui, Guangxi, Fujian, across the Taiwan Strait. So when the Fujian uprising started, a small amount of Taiwanese even shipped across the strait to join the revolutionary armies. Okay. And last, Guangdong. So these uprisings happened all within 1 month after the 1911 revolution. There were more, but I didn't show them up. So I just want to tell you that just because the Revolution Army kept Wuchang, so the other provinces continued to counter the Qing court's force and are calling for independence or republican system. Why the Shanghai Revolution succeeded quickly? Domestically, probably the mediocre governance and the corruption of the Qing court. And also the support of the constitutionalism group, Li Xianpai. They would like to have a constitutional monarchy and local self-government, very different from the system intended to be carried out by the Qing dynasty. And also the new army mentioned by a lot of scholars studying the Shanghai Revolution. But the new army actually had at least two kinds. A better new army commanded by Yuan Shikai or others in Tianjin. We called it Beiyang Army, in the North Ocean Army, New Army. And the Southern New Army actually had a mediocre weaponry system. Usually, for example, those in Wuhan, Wuchang, those are Southern New Army. But actually, in comparison with the conventional Qing armed force, they were still better. Internationally, I think one of the very important factors is U.S. Secretary of State John Hayes' open door policy in 1899, which called for the equal access to trade in China and respect for China's territorial integrity. This also means that the U.S. would like to have a status quo in China, and also the U.S. would like to help China, avoid being torn up by Western powers. So the open door policy actually at that time helped China in the sense that the Revolution Army could have some chance to fight against the Qing court without being colonized by various Western powers at that time. And of course, assistance of overseas Chinese. According to some scholars, about 80% of Dr. Sun Yat-sen's finance during the revolution period was from overseas Chinese. And when you see there were a lot of news press in Southeast Asia that time, organized by overseas Chinese, most of the news press were responsible for giving some logistics to mainland Chinese revolutions. So, and also not to mention in the revolution before the Shanghai Revolution, we called it March 29th Revolution in Huanghuagang, Guangzhou. Professor Liu just mentioned in his beginning. 1/3 of those martyrs were from overseas Chinese. 1/3. So that's why we called overseas Chinese is the mother of the revolution of the Republic of China. And that's why we always have continued to maintain the Overseas Chinese Affairs Commission under the central government system, because we do pay high respect to overseas Chinese. But I have to say that KMT was not the only ruling party until 1928. As you can see, 1912 to 1928, China was actually governed by central or provisional military government of ROC. So KMT went to Guangzhou to have its own nationalist government of Guangzhou. We called it in Chinese Nanfang Zhenfu or 革命政府. So after 1928, KMT returned to power. That period until 1949, we called the nationalist government of Nanking because the capital was in Nanking. And after 1949 to present, we just called it ROC government on Taiwan. So how we, as the Republic of China, recognize the Shanghai Revolution? We think that in general that Shanghai Revolution is a trigger of nationwide revolutions against the Qing dynasty. And of course, the success of the 1911 revolution helped China establish democracy and helped Chinese people regain freedom in politics. And it is also very meaningful for the Republic of China or for China against imperialism and against all these unequal treaties of China, which later led to the demand of China to take Taiwan back. As you can see, Taiwan was ceded to Japan in the first Sino-Japanese War in 1895. And that's why now you can see leaders of mainland China have always called for the return of Taiwan to the motherland. I think part of the reason was because in that time, China would like to take Taiwan back. It's sort of irredentism. So, especially right after the 1949 period, I mean, between 1949 to roughly 1970s, in Taiwan, we had a very strong sense of patriotic education at all levels. For example, the Sanminzhui education and history, geography education, focusing on China instead of the island of Taiwan, which helped Taiwan students understand more about their motherland, China. But we didn't know too much about our land, Taiwan, that time. And a lot of politicians encourage people to study history, to respect the Shanghai Revolution and those martyrs. And we had some nationalist art and culture works like the movie Shin-Hye Revolution, the Double Tenth in the Shanghai year. It's a very patriotic movie, And also, the then government tried to limit different descriptive or analytical angles as to the explanation of Shanghai Revolution. You could have only one angle, which is KMT angle, KMT perspective that time. But the KMT government gradually realized that it had to do something in order to prevent Taiwan from becoming another losing land. And also the KMT had to develop Taiwan as a showcase for all Chinese people in accordance with the three doctrines of the people, Sanminzhui. So, for example, this is one of the very earliest programs in Taiwan, which we call the land reform program. The very first, one of the very first is land to the tiller policy. So you can see in Taishan County of Taipei, people, I believe he was one of the officials in charge of promoting this land to the tiller policy. So he used a chalkboard to tell people what happened. But I doubt whether or not these people really could read these characters that time. Okay. And in the 60s, KMT government established the very first in Asia, we call it Export Processing Zone. It was in December 1966. So it was sort of like a mix of free trade area zone and some manufacture science parks, scheme. So it was the very first one, and which facilitated Taiwan to transform from very agricultural society to a heavy industrial society. And under President Jiang Jingguo, he launched the 10 major construction projects during 1970s and 80s. So you can see a lot of communication and traffic constructions, like the China Ship Construction Corporation and the superhighway nuclear plants and the railroad system around the island of Taiwan, which was very important for the future development of Taiwan nowadays. And also Taiwan developed a lot of, quite a few science and industrial parks. The most notable one could be in Hsinchu. And maybe some of you have paid visits to the Hsinchu Science Park. Now it had more than 140,000 employees in that science park. And in total, see, the science parks attract over 137 billion US dollars capital inflow. And just last year, the total revenue with the three science parks reached 72.8 billion US dollars, which was quite a success. And you can see in the environment, in the 70s, in the 80s, when Hsinchu Science Park was established, people always thought, wow, that was part of the US. Very beautiful sceneries and the roads, everything, to attract our talents overseas to come back to Taiwan to serve. And gradually can see some industrial transformation from heavy industrialization to these high-tech, high-end products. Like these products you can see on the screen. Most of you have used these microchips, these memory cards, and ASUS transformer, and Acer. I'm not selling these products, okay? And Acer Aspire One, and HTC mobile phones made in Taiwan, so that we upgrade Taiwan's industrial levels to compete with our competitors, such as South Korea or some other rising economic powers in Southeast Asia. But we experienced some twilight of the glorious past between 2005 and 2008 when the Democratic Progressive Party was in power in Taiwan. So that party and the former President Lee Teng-hui, who was accidentally former chairman of the KMT, tried to deny the link between Taiwan and ROC. Of course, they tried to deny the link between Taiwan and the 1911 revolution. So they tried to promote the Taiwan identity, which detached Taiwan from China, and they tried to alter next generation's recognition, knowledge of Taiwan and quote-unquote China. They tried to form a new Taiwan. But luckily, when the KMT returned to power in May 2008, KMT tried to recall people's attention to the Shanghai Revolution by holding a lot of activities to celebrate the centennial year of the Republic of China. For example, we have some concerts, for a lot of artists, and the Foreign Affairs Ministry organized an exhibition of the Republic of China's diplomatic archives, including a lot of unequal treaties, like Nanking treaties or Genzi treaties, a lot of treaties, to show people how the country has gone through all difficulties to stand up in this modern world. And of course, you can see we have a cultural roadshow starting from just 1st September till the end of November. So you can see some poppy characters here and some Taiwanese god here. We use some very interesting icons to attract more young people to know the history of this country. And this is an interfaith centennial celebration conducted by Foguangshan, a very big Buddhist group in Kaohsiung. We call it Praying for Love and Peace concert. Okay, a lot of these were sponsored by the Republic of China government and also sponsored by the Overseas Compatriots. Actually, they called Overseas Chinese Affairs Commission again. This ROC Centennial Torch Relay worldwide, starting from Honolulu, because Honolulu is the place, as I said, the birth of the KMT. And this is Atlanta. The torch went through Atlanta.
Already came here?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So what about our tie with Shin-Hye Revolution? Okay, as I said, some people living in Taiwan had participated in a lot of revolution uprisings in mainland China. And that's why President Ma has shown his highest respect to those martyrs by going to the martyrs' shrine in Taipei City every year as ROC president to memorize all these efforts and contributions made by these martyrs. This is one scene taken by the photographers just March 29th. We call it the Youth Day, because March 29th was the day when the Huang Revolution happened, and we lost actually close to 100 lives. So we celebrate, we memorized the day as our Youth Day. And for example, Zhang Jipu, I couldn't find his picture. Okay, Zhang Jipu was probably one of the most great Chinese, Taiwanese men to mainland China to help those revolutions, especially Shanghai Revolutions. And Zhang Jipu, especially, he was from Penghu Island, not on the island of Taiwan. And Luo Fuxing, you can see he was from Miaoli. But perhaps you could doubt that how come Luo Fuxing looks a little bit like a foreigner, not Chinese? Because actually he originally from Indonesia. He was Indonesian Chinese. Okay, and he participated in a lot of revolutions, also conducted by the Tongmenghui and KMT. And Lin Zumi, he was from the Lin family of Taichung, a very big, famous family of Taichung, Linjia, Taichung Li, Wufeng, Taichung. And he not only donated to help a lot of uprisings on China, and also he was given an order by Deng Yat-Sen as a Mainland force commander. And Lin Weige, Da Daochen, Taipei, also donated a lot to help the revolutions. So I think, again, revolution triggered the connection not only between China and KMT, but actually among ROC, KMT, mainland Chinese and Taiwanese. And also, I have to say, Taiwanese also participated either by donating or by taking actions in various revolutions aimed at overthrowing the Qing court. So I think I took too much time, but I hope by this kind of presentation, can you better understand the tie between ROC and the revolution. Thank you.
So I want to invite our speakers to come up to the podium. We're going to open the floor. We still have about 30 minutes. So whoever wants to ask questions, please direct your question to one or a couple particular speakers. Make your question succinct and short, and then we'll get the speakers to answer. Before I do that, I just want to tell you one episode. My boss wanted to know about the Shanghai Revolution, so I briefly said what Professor Huang just said. He said, oh, now I understand why the Chinese government is so sensitive, because it's all civil society, right? 共进会, 同盟会, this is all civil society, so therefore we're not going to allow a whole lot of civil society. And then he went a little bit disrespectful. He said, Dr. Shen-Hye, wasn't he a terrorist? Because we talk about all the assassinations and all of that. So I think even though it's not correct to say so, but it is, Dr. Huang talked about how Taiwan is celebrating the revolution. For mainland China, there is tremendous reluctance to celebrate the centennial. They are going to celebrate, but the connotation of celebrating something like this, it's a little bit, because people like to make connections and people like to make reference. And you see the trend now in mainland China of historians. They cannot talk about the current political situation in China, but they make reference to what happened 100 years ago. They make reference to why the Qing dynasty was reluctant to pursue reform. And then hopefully they'll be able to persuade the government, just like get the lesson, you need to do it now. All right, so I'll open the floor for questions. Carver, John, Professor.
John Carver, Georgia Tech, for Professor Huang. When I first started going to Taiwan in the 1970s, the slogan was Guangfu Dalu, recover the mainland. And the nationalists are going to go back over on the mainland, people are going to rise up, and the communist regime would be overthrown. and the Republic of China would be established on the mainland. I can see how you could use all the stuff you talked about to construct a narrative about the Republic of China on Taiwan's duty to help the people on the mainland realize their long dream for a democratic system. I mean, you led the revolution of 1911, tried to build democracy, had to go in the 1920s, and now Taiwan is the first democratic polity in the long tradition of Chinese politics, so on and so forth. My question is, how many people within the blue camp in Taiwan, how many people advocate that Taiwan, the Republic of China on Taiwan, has yet a destiny to help liberate the people of the Chinese mainland? Does that idea still have market?
I think before Professor Huang answers, we want to collect a few more questions, so they're going to answer them. Yeah, the gentleman back there.
Yes, a question for...
Could you identify yourself, please?
Yes, John Israel, retired, University of Virginia. I have a question for you, Professor Liu, and one for Mary Bullock. Very briefly, you said that not until the 1980s did Taiwan begin to realize Sun Yat-sen's dreams. That would be in terms of democracy. I recall as early as the 1960s, though, some people in Taiwan said that Taiwan's economic development also owed much to the Sanminjui, the three principles of the people of Sun Yat-sen. My question is a little bit skeptical on both counts. To what extent are these developments on Taiwan attributable to Sun Yat-sen's thought, and to what extent is Sun Yat-sen's thought brought in as a post hoc rationalization for what happened for various other reasons? Mary Bullock's point about continuities between Republican China and the People's Republic of China, I think, very well taken. But the continuities, Mary, that you mentioned are mostly positive. Could we not also talk about negative continuities? For example, corruption in the Republic of China and the People's Republic, the urban-rural disparities, also similar between the two periods, the urban-rural imbalance, authoritarian nationalism in the two periods, and finally, a democracy as a distant goal, but something that had to be held in check in favor of one-party dictatorship, also being a factor in common.
Thank you. Any more questions from our audience? I would like to have one more before I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. No? Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Adam Chen. I have a question for Professor Bullock. I missed your presentations. I'm sorry. Yeah, just curious about your comments on how the revolution have transformed or impact the medicine and the health system of China. This is probably one of the subcategory of social developments. Yeah. Thanks.
So we will start with Mary and then go to Professor Huang, and Professor Wu can chip in.
Well, first on the continuities, I did emphasize some of the more positive state building aspects, but I made reference to, I think I said, unseemly areas of continuity. Certainly scholars of the Republican period and looking at the late Qing have really talked about how corruption, but also coercion, reached much further down into the system than perhaps in the Qing dynasty and became more institutionalized. So I think that that is the negative that we see that came out in the Republican period, continued in Taiwan for a while, and of course continues in many ways in China today. So I think one of the bigger questions would be, as a modernizing state with a strong authoritarian framework, how do we really look at the 20th century and look at both the values of the 1911 revolution, but also how did they reinforce the implementation, how did that reinforce many of the negatives for a very long time. I think that's one of the realities actually in both areas. On the health system, I'm not aware that the revolution of 1911 itself had much to say about the health system. I was fascinated, however, in your picture of the Manchurian plague, which occurs in 1910, and certainly 1909, 1910, 11, I think.
And 1910 actually,
And certainly today, the Chinese really use the establishment of the Manchurian Plague Prevention Bureau as the beginning of public health in China. And that consciousness moves very rapidly in the 1910s in particular, because Western ideas of germ contagion, et cetera, become widely known. And so you have also a very important part of trying to take back the treaty ports is to be able to establish your own quarantine services. And so one of the rationales for both the Qing and some of its steps, and then the nationalist government, even under the Beiyang government, was to reclaim quarantine in the ports and not to give it up to the imperialist powers. So I think that this is an era of the growth of modern public health.
I think the idea of recovering the mainland doesn't have any market in Taiwan anymore, because yes, in the past, I mean long past, we were instructed to prepare ourselves for the possible recovery of mainland China anytime. Right.
The influence of the ideas and institutions of Taiwan and things like that.
Right. So right now, I think what the ROC government is trying to do is to try to make Taiwan a beacon of democratization for mainland China. So we always say that the competition between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait is not on sovereignty. It is actually on the institution, political institution, economic institution, or social institution, or what kind of system the country is running to better its people's life, living. So, and also I think Taiwan has been very ambitious in the sense that Taiwan does not only compete with mainland China in democracy, but also with all the other Chinese societies, including Hong Kong, Macau, or Singapore included. We would like to make Taiwan the best democratic Chinese society in the world. And we are trying very hard to do that, even though we sometimes encounter some turbulences. But I think in comparison, I think Taiwan is now still the best in terms of fulfilling the democratic values among all these different Chinese societies. Thank you.
Professor Lu, any other questions?
I just want, I just want to add that for these staff photo collections, we have quite a different sort of interest of that collection from mainland and Taiwan and Hong Kong. Because before we published that book, we tried because photo books is quite expensive to publish. So we tried both Taiwan, mainland, and US publishers. The reaction is quite interesting because Taiwan, the commercial press in Taiwan just showed no interest to publish that collection, although staff was hired as employee of commercial press. And the mainland, of course, they published part of that in Chinese. In fact, it's 10 years ago. But the captions is totally, I won't say totally wrong, but it's to meet the political need of that particular time. Only press is sure real interest in Stafford's photo was Hong Kong. In fact, this year in March, the Sun Yat-sen Museum in Hong Kong have an exhibition of staff photos. They used part of the caption I wrote, but the photo was exhibited there, much more than I included in the book. So I compare mainland Hong Kong and Taiwan, their reaction to to these corrections. It's quite interesting, although I don't have any conclusion on to that, but that's just a thought.
Hanchao, what are you going to do with the photographs that are not published?
Right now, the plan is, because after the book published, quite a few press, including some Europeans, they approached me and approached Anderson, the owner of the photo. Some proposed to put them on some internet, but with certain copyrights, because there's other collections on 19th century, 20th century China was donated, for example, to Duke University. So probably next step, I will arrange the photo, because over 1,000, to be totally digitalized and eventually put into some web page. Yeah, that could be issue. Yeah, but he definitely holding this copyright right now.
I don't think any of our speakers have answered Professor Israel's question. That is, how much credit we're going to give to Dr. Sun Yat-sen. Because in Professor Huang's slides, you see Shanghai Revolution and then the establishment of democracy. What kind of democracy was established then? I mean, that's why I said not until the 1980s when we saw Taiwan transformed itself from a party state to a more democratic state. So I would like our panelists to answer Professor Israel's question is, industrial parks, do we give credit to Dr. Sun Yat-sen because he championed railroads and other industrialization of China? So please.
I was in China this year on May Day, May 1st. And I don't know that I think I'd been there before on May 1st, but one interesting thing was that Sun Yat-sen's photo went up on Tiananmen Square. And when I saw it up there, I thought, oh, well, of course, it's 1911. It's the 100th anniversary of 1911. Maybe his photo, it's the same size as Mao Zedong, and it was on the the monument to the heroes of the revolution. So they were really opposite each other. And I thought, well, maybe it's going to be up all year because it's the 100th anniversary of 1911. But in fact, the next day it was taken down. And so
was the statue of Confucius.
So I wondered what was going on. I was then told that actually Sun Yat-sen's photo goes up every May 1st, just for May 1st. Now, I don't know if that's, and then I wondered why on May 1st? Why would Sun Yat-sen,
it's the Chinese Labor Day.
It's Chinese Labor Day,
Right.
But this is my point. Why do you honor Sun Yat-sen in particular on Labor Day? Is it because there is a residual sense that his economic socialism plan, did make a contribution to China's socialism? So maybe that's why it's there. But I was going to ask you, because you had told us you were going to say something about how China was celebrating this anniversary in China. So maybe you can give a better explanation. I'll let my colleagues answer.
I'll still get Professor Huang to address the question posed by Professor Israel.
It's a very interesting question, actually, because most of the political parties in Eastern society, I think, try to create or shape their own history. They would like to have the right or the control over how people write history relevant to the parties, especially those revolutionary parties. The revolutionary parties, I think, particularly try to make people believe any move made by these parties were righteous, were moral. So at the beginning of the Republic of China history, especially after 1928, surely we could have witnessed the great support of whatever Dr. Sun Yat-sen had done. But actually, if you look back to the history, and now more and more people found out that before the 1911 revolution, why there were so many failures in the Chinese mainland conducted by Tongmenghui or Xinzhonghui. Partially because Dr. Sun Yat-sen insisted on carrying out those uprisings down south. He thought in Guangzhou or Guangdong, the chance would be bigger. But history proved that he was wrong. And also, we figured out there was not only cooperation between him and Song Jiaoren, there was some competition between him and Song Jiaoren, the gentleman who, in cooperation with Dr. Sun Yat-sen, to form Xinzhonghui and Tongmenghui. And not to mention Dr. Sun Yat-sen's ideas and another civil society group called Guangfu Hui, the Recovery Hui, were also different. So Guangfu Hui had never cooperated with Dr. Sun Yat-sen in many, many ways. So anyway, eventually, Dr. Sun Yat-sen's party won the whole revolution and created the republic. And after 1928, the party gradually, returned to power. And after the northern fighting, the ROC government became the only legal government of the Republic of China. So people tended to look at Dr. Sun Yat-sen, in a very respectful way. But I believe, with a lot of different perspectives provided by many, many historians, the judgment on Dr. Sun Yat-sen will change. But I think I think Dr. Sun Yat-sen's achievements in creating the Republic of China cannot be denied. Even though, Dr. Sun Yat-sen is just a person, a human being. He made mistakes. And he argued with somebody, of course, But I think as long as the Republic of China on Taiwan can sustain and maintain its autonomy, independence from mainland China, at least on the Taiwan side, of course, we will continue to pay very high respect to Dr. Sun Yat-sen, even though the government and the civil society will continue to delve into more historical events, data, to figure out how in the world people should judge Dr. Sun Yat-sen.
Do we have any more questions? Yes, back there. Yeah, go ahead.
Colonel Hahn, Educational Studies at Emory. I was intrigued
Can
by
you grab the mic?
the reference to the teaching in Taiwan you mentioned up until 2008. And I'm wondering if people know today, because all of these Chinese societies have undergone educational reforms in the teaching of history. Do you know how the similarities and differences in teaching about the revolution in mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore? What's happening today?
The teaching in history actually has changed largely due to the previous ruling party's policy. So they try to diminish the component on the revolution part and even the pre-1949 parts. All these components have been largely reduced in order to put emphasis on what has been going on after 1949 on Taiwan. So I think that's pretty much what is going on in Taiwan, because I don't have kids. So, all I know is listen to my friends' complaints about their children's lack of historical deep depth and knowledge of quote unquote China,
Let me, yes, since I have mainland background, and also recently because the revolution, the book on revolution, so I have paid some attention how the Chinese teach 19th revolution in high school history book. Basically, they still see Sun Yat-sen as the pioneer of the revolution. The standard book basically argues that Chiang Kai-shek betrayed Sun Yat-sen's revolutionary idea. And CCP was the party who continued the unfinished work of Sun Yat-sen. So Sun Yat-sen has very positive image in mainland China in history books. I would like to also add in English-speaking world, recently there's some new scholarship voice to argue that the law of Sun Yat-sen, in fact, was sort of inflated by late development, because Chiang Kai-shek, after established his government in Nanjing, he needs some political legitimacy, and Sun Yat-sen was the right person to serve for that purpose. So we probably some of you probably know the French historian Mary Brown Bullock, his biography about Sun Yat-sen definitely sort of downplayed the role of Sun Yat-sen. So this is still in academic world still something very debatable. From my research on photos, I can clearly tell at the early stage, because all these book I mentioned or the stuff collection I work on is at the very beginning of the revolution, and there are very few Sun Yat-sen photos there, right? The main figure were Huang Xin, who was next in terms of importance to Sun Yat-sen, and Li Yuanhong and Yuan Shikai. These three figures. Sun Yat-sen definitely almost an afterthought in the collection I reviewed. So in some way, probably verify Professor Bullock's point that Sun Yat-sen was an icon used by Chiang Kai-shek. Although again, you can argue against that. Sun Yat-sen's idea did catch fire, and that's why he was elected as provisional president, even though he was still in the United States at that time. He was in Denver when the revolution broke. There's a different, although it's only 100 years ago, but it's already some kind of legend. One version said he got information when he took a train from Denver to Kansas City. On the train, read morning newspaper, say, China had a revolution, and he was revered as the father of the revolution. And he, of course, was surprised to him. Although he worked many years on that, but he did not plan this particular event. Another version said he was in very poor condition financially. So he worked as a busboy in a Colorado Chinese restaurant. And that day, a telegraph put on his train, which was sent by Wang Xin, the person who was working with him. And on the telegraph, told him what happened in Wuchang, asked him to rush back immediately. And he did not went back immediately. He went to east coast of United States. He went to Europe, tried to persuade Western power at least to keep neutrality and also give some financial aid to the revolution. So he went back to China. He arrived in Shanghai on Christmas Day of 1911, and the crowd welcomed him and asked him to give a speech. And he said, I did not bring back any penny. What I bring back as revolutionary idea. That's part of the story of Sun Yat-sen's role in this particular event we call 1911 revolution. Of course, the idea is different. His idea was, the entire idea inspired the people. And that's why he was revered as the father of republic, but not particular actions during that particular time.
So our time is up. I want to conclude this by sharing with you a story of President Carter. He has tremendous interest in China. He said when he was little, his uncle was serving in China as a naval person. His uncle sent back postcards. One of the cards said, Sun Yat-sen was the George Washington of China. And of course, I think what we're seeing, I don't know about Taiwan, I think what we're seeing in China is de-Washingtonization of Sun Yat-sen. I think recently, if you look at, so there's a revisionist approach to the whole thing, is Song Jiaoren's status is growing, whereas Dr. Sun Yat-sen's status is declining because of the way he worked with the Russians, the way he was, when he was the president, he said we want to have an American presidential system. When he saw that he was not going to be the president, he wanted to have a parliamentary system. So he was trying to cut both ways. Lastly, I want to say, because Professor Huang mentioned about Taiwan competing with China on democracy, I don't think China is in a position to compete with Taiwan on democracy. However, I do want to say two things. Number one, I was in Taiwan at the meeting. Someone said Taiwan is the beacon of democratization for China. I totally agree with that because share the same language, share the same history, share the same culture. So for the Chinese people and the government officials to see multiple party system, freedom of press, all of those evil things are not going to turn a country upside down. I think that's very, very important. Secondly, this is not my argument, this is Fei Wang's argument, is that mainland China always want to unify with Taiwan. And to unify with Taiwan, you got to change your political system. If you don't change it, then that unification thing is forever going to be a distant dream. So we're continue in the struggle to realize one of the dreams of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. On that, I thank all of you for your participation. We do have coffee and fruit. Our speakers will be here for a while so we can mingle. Thanks a lot.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.